You can't even imagine what was recently discovered in Antarctica. From secret ice tunnels and UFOs found beneath the ice to ghost ships, subglacial rivers almost 500 kilometers long, and millions of nests on the seafloor. This isn't a wasteland, but a living laboratory of mysteries. Today on Top Facts, we're heading to Antarctica and looking at the most incredible and shocking discoveries on this continent. We'll unpack blood falls, check the stories about pyramids, tunnels at the South Pole, and Martian rocks. And we'll also show a perfectly rectangular iceberg. Which of these are facts and which are myths? Stay until the very end, and I hope you spend these 2 hours with incredible interest. It's going to be insanely interesting.
In a remote area of Antarctica, about 50 miles from the coast, what is believed to be the remains of a prehistoric beast was discovered, a fossilized skeleton of an unknown ancient creature. The remains, measuring from 3 to 6 meters, were frozen for thousands of years. Now we know that Antarctica was not always an icy continent. During the Cretaceous period, this land was ice-free, and forests grew at both of Earth's poles. So we can confidently speak about the presence of dinosaurs in Antarctica. Many fossils have been found on this continent. These discoveries suggest that dinosaurs once thrived in this region, possibly back when today's Antarctica had not yet separated from the lower part of the supercontinent Pangaea, called Gondwana. In 2011, a mysterious fossil was discovered in Antarctica that resembled a deflated soccer ball. After many years of study and analysis, scientists determined that the fossil was a giant egg, approximately 66 million years old. Its dimensions of about 27 by 17 centimeters broke the record for the largest soft-shelled egg, and the find was recognized as the biggest egg of any animal ever discovered on the planet. It was also the first fossilized egg found in Antarctica. For those who do not already know, Antarctica is home to millions of penguins. Although they are funny and cute, they can also face trouble due to extreme weather conditions. Researchers often discover mummified penguins. However, it is important to understand whether the find is a fossil. One group of mummified penguins turned out to be very ancient. According to tests, that ancient colony was around 5,000 years old, and nowadays, penguins no longer nest in that area. According to the latest research and findings, evidence has emerged that the first people to see Antarctica were the indigenous people of New Zealand. This challenges the previously accepted notion that Europeans were the first. The traditional story says that they discovered the icy continent in the early 19th century. However, new research combines oral narratives and the traditional evidence of the Maori people. To better understand their presence in Antarctica's history, let us turn to the sources. There are several accounts suggesting that Maori traveled from Polynesia to the southernmost continent as early as the 7th century. Oral stories in traditional folklore mention a Polynesian explorer as the first person to travel to Antarctica. These stories describe his encounters with icebergs and deep-sea creatures. Most likely these plots refer to the Antarctic landscape and fauna. If you have ever seen the wall in the fantasy series Game of Thrones, then you will understand my point. It is a wall hiding an entire world with other civilizations and icy zombies. It sounds just as frightening as it looks. Yes, Antarctica has its own ice wall, and what lies beyond it is quite mysterious. A terrifying conspiracy theory suggests that there is a hidden world, and this secret information is being concealed from the general public. According to the theory, Antarctica is not a continent at Earth's lower part, but a protective wall that surrounds a flat Earth. It is believed that no one is allowed to visit its limits, and that agents of a dark government ensure no one crosses beyond the ice wall. Satellite images from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and other independent sources clearly show that Antarctica is not entirely barren. There are videos, such as the one here, where we can see structures resembling human creations. So there might be a grain of truth in this desperate theory. According to Darwin's theory of evolution, jellyfish appeared on Earth about 600 million years ago, long before humans or even dinosaurs. Given this, a strange discovery in Antarctica raises intriguing questions. A group of paleontologists discovered two strange fossilized human skeletons of very small size in the mountains. But the most astonishing aspect of these skeletons is their alleged age, 600 million years. The fossils were accidentally discovered by a group of American paleontologists who initially sought evidence of dinosaur existence in Antarctica. The finds amazed them not only with their unique shapes. The first skeleton was buried deep in layers of sedimentary rock and was less than 30 centimeters in size. It was perfectly preserved, and the second skeleton, unlike the first, lay in an extended position. Admittedly, there is plenty here to puzzle a large group of experts. A lot of strange things happen in Antarctica, but this 2014 discovery once again prompts us to think about extraterrestrial civilizations. If you compare an ordinary human skull to the one the archaeologist found, you will see that they are completely different. One theory proposes that the three skulls belong to extraterrestrials, but another explanation suggests that certain ancient civilizations performed unusual manipulations to elongate their skulls. Some time ago, mysterious satellite images from Antarctica showed a massive staircase leading into a snow-covered mountain. This strange sight triggered heated discussions among conspiracy theorists. Some suggested that the structure could be part of a pyramid. Others claimed these lines could be tracks left by unidentified flying objects, or unidentified flying objects spelled out. There were even those who believed the stairway was evidence of the legendary city of Atlantis, and that it might be located in Antarctica. A closer look reveals that beneath layers of ice, in accordance with a clear stepped pattern, there may indeed be some hidden structure. The McMurdo Station is located on the southern peninsula of Ross Island. It is the largest station in Antarctica. It was originally established by the government of the United States in 1956, and since then it has served as a center for scientific research and can simultaneously accommodate up to 1,200 residents. In January of 2015, an intriguing revelation occurred. A former United States Navy flight engineer who had served at McMurdo for 14 years shared remarkable stories of his time in Antarctica from 1983 until his retirement in 1997. He took part in several Antarctic squadron expeditions, which included rescuing people in various locations, and during those missions, nothing unusual happened. Everything was routine until one fine day when the entire crew saw strange silvery circular objects in the transantarctic mountains. They moved in sync from one mountain peak to another, then soared at incredible speed straight up and disappeared in a flash. The most amazing thing is that this unusual event happened not just once, but was observed multiple times. Logically, a sparsely populated, deserted continent is the perfect place for unidentified flying objects, is it not? In 2012, scientists spotted through satellite a strange oval formation in Antarctica's ice. They took it for an extraterrestrial structure. Indeed, it appears like a coherent assembly of compartments. How could something like this be designed in the center of Antarctica? It is difficult to answer that question, and therefore most people lean toward its extraterrestrial origin. Deception. Island is situated at the northwestern edge of the Antarctic Peninsula in the South Shetland Islands. Its geological features are unique, and its history is intriguing. It is one of two active volcanoes in Antarctica, having experienced more than 20 eruptions over the past 2 centuries. The island's horseshoe shape is the result of a powerful volcanic eruption that occurred over 10,000 years ago. Deception Island became a site of intense human activity. It served as a British military outpost during the Second World War and was once a busy station for seal observation. The island also witnessed the rise and fall of various projects, from research stations to scientific expeditions. In 1969, the British base was destroyed and abandoned, and from that time onward, the island fell on hard days. Although its volcanic activity is well documented, there have also been reports of regularly occurring unexplained phenomena. Thanks to these accounts, the island has gained a reputation as one of the most popular places in Antarctica to observe strange events, specifically the presence of ghosts. Robert Scott's hut is a historic building on the north shore of Cape Evans on Ross Island in Antarctica. It was built in only 9 days in 1911 by the British Antarctic Expedition of 1910 to 1913, also known as the Terra Nova Expedition. The hut was pre-assembled in London before being shipped to Antarctica, and it housed 25 members of the party as a base. But tragically, during the ill-fated expedition, Robert Scott and his companions perished on the return trip from the South Pole, about 260 kilometers from their base camp. They were carrying the first Antarctic fossils ever found, which were identified as evidence that Antarctica was once covered by forests. Did you know that certain ancient dynasties and wealthy families own private islands where they are legally free to do whatever they want? And what if we tell you that one of these islands is in Antarctica? Rothschild Island in Antarctica was named by Jean-Baptiste Charcot, the leader of a French Antarctic expedition, after the famous banking dynasty. These rocks are also home to emperor penguins, and the Rothschild family, specifically Baron Jacob Rothschild, owns, among other places, an entire colony on the Cook Islands connected to offshore financial dealings. Secret documents obtained by international journalists in 2013 revealed the creation of a network of terrestrial trusts and shell companies. Perhaps it is profitable to do business with an address in Antarctica. We simply do not know all the details of the business world. If you know their cunning plan, let me know in the comments. At the height of their power, the Nazis did everything possible to establish global domination. So they sought out any technologies they could, including turning to the knowledge of ancient civilizations. This legendary secret Hitler base, 211 New Berlin, was supposedly established in Antarctica in the territory of New Swabia, where the Nazis allegedly founded the Fourth Reich and hid relics, including the Holy Grail. Some accounts claim that the base really existed, while others say it is just a legend. Supposedly, the base is hidden in the folds of an ice-free mountain range where there are grassy fields and hot springs. Many assume the base is mere cover, although there are hypotheses suggesting that Hitler himself fled there after the war. We know Antarctica has an enormous amount of ice, but when researchers saw this iceberg, they thought they were dealing with something supernatural. It was discovered in 2018 and took the shape of a perfect rectangle with smooth walls and sharp right angles. This iceberg can be seen on the eastern coast near the Larsen Ice Shelf, where it drifts in the water. Could something supernatural be happening here? Another incredible incident in Antarctica occurred in May of 2021, a crack in the ice shelf. The world's largest iceberg, designated A76, measuring about 170 kilometers long and 25 kilometers wide, broke off from the western part of the Ron Ice Shelf in Antarctica and is now adrift in the Weddell Sea. On the mysterious Greenwich Island, part of the South Shetland Islands archipelago, a strange and unexplained discovery was made. In 2007, observers noticed a mysterious cave on Google Maps, which disappeared 6 months later. This unexpected event sparked various theories, from the idea of an entrance to Earth's interior to speculation about a military conspiracy. The cave had imposing dimensions, about 25 meters tall and 75 meters wide, suggesting it might hold hundreds, if not thousands of people. But did this hidden cave really serve as an access point to an unknown world beneath the surface? Or could it have formed naturally, like an avalanche revealing an ancient underground chamber? Another hypothesis is that it was the result of climate change, suggesting that the gradual melting of ice is exposing secret caves. Near the cave, an unusual structure was also discovered, resembling a grotto reached by man-made steps. It seems that human involvement was indeed present here. In 2017, a giant hole appeared in the Antarctic ice, known as a Polynya. It emerged in the Lazarev Sea and initially covered an area of about 10,000 square kilometers. A Polynya is a thawed patch of water surrounded by ice, and in this case, it was a large region of unfrozen ocean circled by ice. This Polynya was first recorded in 1974, but had not reappeared until then. Scientists were intrigued by its formation and persistence. They sought to understand why it formed and how long it might last. In the winters of 2016 and 2017, the Polynya emerged and remained for several weeks longer than usual. It is thought that it arose from a combination of factors, including strong coastal winds that push the ice in different directions. You see a series of black holes in the ice that resemble holes in cheese. Where do they come from? If there is dust within the ice, it can create so-called cryoconite holes. They form when the wind carries dust particles into the ice. Each summer, they absorb sunlight and melt deeper into the ice. In reality, these are accumulations of dark debris, cryoconite, and by the principle of a black hole, it absorbs light and forms a dark layer at the bottom of the hole. Cryoconite can consist of dust, soot, and other particles, and the holes range in diameter from a few centimeters to several meters. They often fill with water, creating tiny ecosystems that support microbial life. Bacteria, fungi, algae, and invertebrates thrive there. In winter, an icy cap can form above them, trapping a small amount of liquid water. But when summer returns, the cap melts, and the colony grows further. We know that the deepest point on Earth is the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, whose bottom lies about 11 kilometers below sea level. However, in Antarctica, they discovered the deepest point on a continental landmass, located in the east under Denman Glacier. This giant glacier spans about 12 kilometers wide and lies roughly 3.5 kilometers below sea level, and there researchers found a strange opening filled with ice. Despite countless attempts, nobody has been able to determine what is beneath it. Each time scientists flew over that opening, it evaded their radar. The most frustrating part is that Denman Glacier might hold all the answers we need to explain the effect of rising sea levels. Lake Vostok is one of Antarctica's largest lakes, and recently Russian scientists discovered a creature hidden in its depths. It is a giant animal resembling a squid with 14 tentacles. It is theorized to be about 10 meters long and can also release toxins into the water. Quite a creepy find, do you not think? Thwaites Glacier, also known as the Doomsday Glacier, is a disturbing natural wonder. This huge glacier in West Antarctica is melting faster than previously thought, and the consequences could be catastrophic. It could easily raise global sea levels. The primary reason is the presence of warm ocean water lurking a few kilometers below the surface. This glacier is one of the largest on the continent, but also among the most vulnerable. Since the 1980s, it has been melting rapidly, leading to the loss of hundreds of billions of tons of ice, contributing about 4% to global sea level rise, which is an enormous figure. However, recent studies have shown that warm, high-pressure seawater has reached the glacier's base, making the risk of melting even more serious. The Doomsday Glacier acts like a natural dam that holds back other ice sheets in West Antarctica. If it collapses, it could destabilize neighboring ice sheets, causing even greater sea level rise. Its ominous nickname is no accident. It truly has fateful significance for the planet, including faraway places like Florida and the Maldives. This river, about 460 kilometers long, gathers water at the base of the Antarctic ice sheet from an area the size of Germany and France combined. But let us go back a bit. A significant discovery revealed a river underneath the Antarctic ice sheet. It strongly affects ice flow and melting, which could speed up ice loss as the climate warms. The find was made possible by airborne radar and hydrological models, shedding new light on a previously unknown river system beneath the ice. The existence of this river challenges earlier assumptions that there was relatively little water at the base of Antarctic ice sheets. New research shows that the area where the East and West Antarctic ice sheets meet is almost inaccessible and poorly studied, and the river, which melts ice as it flows into the sea, undermines the ice shelves more quickly than we think, especially in light of current climate change. So now we know that rivers also flow beneath the ice. There are many different ecosystems on our planet, but a new one was recently discovered in the depths of the Antarctic Ocean. It has been named the Sponge Garden. These huge colonies, located around the peaks of extinct volcanoes, include organisms that look like oyster mushrooms, and they are one of the primary forms of life in that area. They are truly magnificent to behold. Would you like to see a real monster that has been hiding under the ice for centuries? Presenting the arthropod discovered in Antarctica called the flat-headed monster. This creepy creature was found by a student from the University of Manitoba in Canada. The student did not intentionally look for it, but stumbled upon a new animal during an expedition. The monster has 8 bristly legs, which it uses to paddle its nearly transparent body through the water. Altogether, it is quite strange why it has not been spotted elsewhere on Earth. If you do not like worms, you will be shocked to see this one. The Antarctic scale worm is the stuff of nightmares. A creepy creature about 20 centimeters long with a pure gold shell on its back that lives in the Southern Ocean off the coast of Antarctica at depths of over 500 meters. So do not worry, you will hardly ever meet it in real life. Antarctica is undoubtedly a unique place, home to fewer animal species, seals, penguins, and orcas, for instance. But did you know that transparent fish have been found there? This completely new fish species was discovered by a film crew working on a documentary called Antarctic Expedition. The semi-translucent fish has come to be known as the Antarctic blackfin icefish. It has a unique body that seems silicone-like, and the reason for that appearance is the absence of red blood cells containing hemoglobin. It is the only vertebrate without them, which means it does not absorb oxygen in the usual way, and the fish's body appears semi-translucent. A poor Arctic fox got stuck on a melting, drifting iceberg. It was stuck on a platform several meters away from any solid surface. Fortunately, people on a boat saw it and decided to help. They approached the iceberg and took the fox to a safe place on board. Of course, catching the animal was not easy, but everyone understood it was the only chance of rescue. So you do not forget the difference between the poles, I remind you. The northern one is home to polar bears, while the southern one is the domain of penguins, and they are quite adorable. Although polar bears are considered the most dangerous predators in the Arctic, there is something that turns them into loyal friends. One bear keeps coming back to visit a female filmmaker named Karen. She once rescued a cub abandoned by its mother. Since then, the polar bear has befriended Karen. Here we see the charming fellow named Peanut chasing her drone.
Harkovchanka. That is exactly how, in Russian, the unique model of an Antarctic all-terrain vehicle created in the 1950s in the Soviet Union was named. Based on a tractor platform and outwardly resembling a tank, this machine was engineered to work in the most extreme conditions. In 1959, 2 of these giants were delivered to Antarctica, and they managed to reach the South Pole itself. Today, one of them stands as a monument not far from the Russian Antarctic station Progress. In the 50s, the USSR, like other countries, was actively developing Antarctica, and it quickly became clear that ordinary tractors could not handle the tasks in such conditions. A machine was needed that could not only survive in the icy desert, but also provide expedition members with safe, warm, and relatively comfortable living quarters. This behemoth was exactly such a solution. Height, more than 4 meters, width, about 3.5, length, almost 8.5 meters. The cabin inside was the size of a small studio where 8 people could settle comfortably. There was a kitchen, a sleeping area, a toilet, and a separate control post for the driver and navigator. And that is not all. A dedicated workshop turned the Harkovchanka into a mobile laboratory. In 1975, an improved version replaced the original and continues to serve to this day. In Antarctica, they found something that seemed no one should ever have seen. A ship literally torn from the icy grip and frozen within it as if in cement. We usually imagine a shipwreck somewhere on the ocean floor. But in Antarctica, everything is different. Here, ships can meet their end by becoming entombed in ice during the coldest periods of the year. If a vessel is not an icebreaker capable of smashing thick ice, it will remain a prisoner until a thaw. And sometimes, the ice simply crushes the hull. This is what happened to one of the most famous vessels in history, Endurance, on which in 1915, the legendary explorer Ernest Shackleton sailed to the shores of Antarctica. The ice squeezed the ship. It sank and lay at a depth of almost 3 kilometers for more than a century before it was found. But the mysterious ship in question here was lifted upward by a flow, as if nature itself decided to preserve it within an icy block. What happened to the crew? What is the story of this doomed voyage? Write in the comments what you think. Recently, a research icebreaking vessel made a discovery scientists call unprecedented, the largest breeding colony of fish ever recorded. At a depth of about 500 meters beneath the ice of the Weddell Sea, a section of seafloor at least 240 square kilometers in area, about 1/3 larger than Washington, District of Columbia, was found, and on it, approximately 60 million active nests. Until this moment, the most social fish species gathered for spawning in at most the hundreds, and scientists had never seen anything like this. The vessel was moving between the Antarctic Peninsula and the continent, mapping the seafloor and filming it with special equipment. In one area beneath the shelf ice, an operator noticed something unusual on the cameras: circles resembling nests. These turned out to be nests of icefish that live only in the Southern Ocean. Interestingly, their blood is absolutely transparent and filled with antifreeze compounds that keep it from freezing in water below zero. This place is called the Pole of Inaccessibility, for good reason. It is here, at the most remote point of Antarctica, equidistant from all its shores, that in 1958, Soviet researchers arrived for the first time in history. A team of 18 people, using heavy tractors, hauled trailers with equipment and modular units to build a station. Upon reaching their goal, they began to erect a small settlement: a hut for 4 people, a radio room, 2 radio masts about 20 meters high, and a set of meteorological instruments. On the roof of the hut, they installed a plastic bust of Lenin, which was turned to face Moscow. But it quickly became clear that staying here for long was impossible. The conditions were too harsh. After only 12 days, the team left the station. A plane took 4 of them, and the rest traveled by sleds. Soviet polar explorers returned here only once, in 1967. The next expedition set foot on these snows only in 2007, and they were Britons, who reached it without any machinery, solely by their own power. Today, this house buried under snow, with its solitary bust and commemorative plaque, has become an official historical monument. Once, British sailors were an important part of the whaling industry in the Southern Hemisphere. Today, only rusty skeletons of buildings and the hulks of ships, dead and fused into the shore, remain of the once bustling stations. This is not the sort of place one would want to visit alone. Toppled steel pipes lie across the roads, half-ruined power station buildings and dormitories gape with empty openings, and their walls crumble, spilling out remains of furniture, rusty beds and bathtubs, lengths of pipe and wiring. Huge steel fat-rendering tanks, almost 10 meters in diameter, look as though someone squeezed them with a giant hand. All this is the result of decades of destructive winds and of time since the station closed. In recent years, attempts have been made to clean up the site and reinforce the buildings to make them safe for tourists. But even now, hurricanes sweeping down from the mountains of this sub-Antarctic island make everything groan and creak. Sheets of rusty iron shriek in the wind, doors slam by themselves, and the spinning ventilator cowls on the old plants whirl without stopping, just as on that day in 1965 when the workers left here forever. The winter of 1899. 10 members of an expedition decided to spend the entire season in Antarctica, settling into pre-assembled modular huts. Inside, they not only lived, but also worked. They set up a photo lab and even a taxidermy workshop, because the expedition's goal was to document the continent's nature. Each person's private space was minimal, only a bunk of one's own. In such conditions, people spent most of the winter literally without getting out of bed, because outside, an eternal chill raged. After the expedition ended, these huts stood for decades, buried in snow and ice, which inadvertently helped preserve them much longer than anyone expected. Some in whispers call them cursed. Erebus. Well, only the restorers know the truth. The restoration work proved vast. It was necessary to reinforce walls bowed under the weight of snow and to save everything inside. 62 specialists from 12 countries worked on the project, experts in wood, metal, textiles, and paper. All three bases, Cape Royds, Cape Evans, and Hut Point, are on Ross Island. And today, a team continues to monitor and maintain these historic places. It was called Endless Sea. The Brazilian yacht, owned by a well-known journalist and entrepreneur, headed for the coast of Antarctica with 4 people on board. They were filming a documentary when suddenly winds of more than 100 kilometers per hour struck. The vessel was tossed straight onto the ice fields. The boat became stuck. The crew sent a distress signal that was picked up by a Chilean naval base. Reaching the site, rescuers took the people off, but the yacht itself could not be saved. Water that penetrated the hull froze immediately, tearing it apart from the inside. The vessel sank to the bottom of a shallow cove at a depth of around 6 meters, where it lay for almost a year until the owner could return and conduct a salvage operation. When the weather cooperated, inflatable buoys were attached and the yacht slowly rose to the surface. Thus ended the story of the ghost from the icy waters. A new base designed to house roughly 150 service members has become a key element in ensuring the autonomy and independence of Russia's naval forces in the Arctic. The country's leadership explicitly calls this a step to strengthen Moscow's presence in the region, and judging by the result, the task has been accomplished. The complex has a modern radar center capable of tracking the movement of ships and aircraft. In addition, the runway here was recently extended to 3.3 kilometers, which allows the reception and refueling of most military aircraft, including fighters patrolling the polar sky. Experts note that the melting of Arctic ice, which is associated with climate change, is making sea routes at these latitudes more accessible and, thus, opening new opportunities for developing energy resources and minerals. Construction of the base, which received the name Arctic Trefoil, was completed in 2017. It is located only 260 kilometers east of the outermost point of Norway's Svalbard archipelago. The structure stands on piles to withstand extreme cold, and inside there is everything for autonomous living. Its own power plant, a medical station, a library, a chapel, a gym, and even a movie theater. The giant Erebus Glacier in Antarctica descends from Mount Erebus and flows into the sea, forming a 6-kilometer-long ice tongue, a long, narrow strip of ice jutting toward the bay. This icy blade with a bluish fringe reaches into the snowy waters of McMurdo Sound, and its thickness ranges from 50 meters at the tip to almost 300 where it presses against the shore. It is a living, constantly changing body, influenced by internal stresses and external forces. Ice tongues form when a glacier's flow quickly enters a sheltered body of water. In the case of Erebus, protection is provided by Cape Evans and Cape Royds, which shield it from the open waters of the Ross Sea. In summer, the sea ice around the tongue melts, and it begins to float without losing its shape. Waves gradually carve intricate patterns into its edges, and sometimes deep caves. In winter, the sea freezes again, locking the ice structure into a new armor. What are those tiny tracks that seem to grow out of the snow like fragile flowers? This rare phenomenon is called elevated tracks. It occurs in regions where dry, frosty, and windy weather persists for weeks. The secret is simple. When a person walks on loose snow, their steps compact it so much that those patches become many times harder than the surrounding surface. A strong and steady wind gradually blows away all the soft snow, while the compacted footprints remain, rising above the surface. Sometimes they can be seen even weeks after a person has passed by. For specialists, this is a signal. The area may have increased avalanche danger. It sounds like science fiction, but a wealthy entrepreneur seriously considered towing an iceberg from Antarctica to the Persian Gulf. And, astonishingly, the technologies for this already exist. There are entire companies producing equipment for so-called ice management operations. The idea is simple. A mass of ice drifting off the coast of the United Arab Emirates could become a source of drinking water. Satellites identify a suitable iceberg, sometimes up to 1.5 kilometers wide. Then a special metal belt is attached to prevent it from breaking apart en route. A journey of about 10 months should end off the coast of the Emirate of Fujairah. True, calculations show that up to 30% of its mass could be lost before arrival. The cost of the project is on the order of $200 million. If the trials succeed, icebergs really could appear in the waters of the Persian Gulf. Imagine an iceberg of almost 1,270 square kilometers in area and more than 150 meters thick. This icy giant, 20 times the area of Manhattan, calved from the Brunt ice shelf in Antarctica nearly a decade after scientists first noticed the appearance of a huge crack. Many were quick to blame global warming, but specialists clarify that such events can also be part of the natural life cycle of ice shelves. They grow until they become too large, then break, and the process begins anew. However, even for this region, the case was unusual. A rift called the North Rift raced toward another one, 34 kilometers away, moving at an incredible speed, almost 1 kilometer per day. And then everything happened literally within a few hours. The ice plate broke off and set out on a free drift. Footage shot by scientists as part of a NASA mission studying how polar regions respond to climate change quite literally exploded across the internet. A huge iceberg with perfectly even edges and a flat surface, as if cut by a giant ruler, became the butt of jokes about aliens and colossal ice chisels. In fact, such formations, called tabular icebergs, are entirely natural. Scientists noticed them off the northern shores of Antarctica during aerial photography. The largest of them was about 1.6 kilometers long, and as with any iceberg, only 1/10 was visible above the water. The rest of its mass was hidden in the depths. The formation of a tabular iceberg can be compared to cutting off a corner from a sheet of paper with scissors. Only instead of paper, there is the edge of an ice shelf, and instead of scissors, there are waves and the forces within the ice. Immediately after calving, the edges are perfectly straight, but once in the open ocean, the iceberg quickly loses sharp lines. They are worn down in collisions with other flows or melted away. The name of this phenomenon comes from the Greek kryo, ice, and konis, dust. Mysterious dark holes on the surface of glaciers were first described by a Swedish explorer back in 1870 while traveling across the Greenland ice sheet. Cryoconite is a kind of icy well of varying size, filled with meltwater and with a layer of dark sediment at the bottom. This dust can include tiny rock particles, soot, microbes, dust blown from deserts on other continents, traces of volcanic eruptions, or emissions from power plants. The dark material absorbs solar heat, the ice beneath melts faster, and the pit gradually deepens. In summer, such holes become tiny ecosystems where cold-loving microorganisms and minute animals find a place. If you ever decide to dive in the waters off Antarctica, be careful, because there you can encounter one of the strangest and deadliest natural phenomena. It is called a Brinicle, or the ice finger of death. Imagine a giant icicle, only growing downward from the sea ice rather than from a roof. It forms from oversalted water, brine, that is produced when seawater freezes and expels salt. Such brine is colder than the surrounding water and begins to sink to the sea floor, creating a swirling flow that freezes everything in its path. As soon as the finger touches the ocean bottom, it turns everything living there into icy statues, sea stars, sea urchins, and other inhabitants. Sometimes at the spot of contact, there remain so-called black lakes of death, pools of super salty and supercooled water deadly to any life. In 1984, in the Allen Hills region of Antarctica, geologists on snowmobiles found a rock that later became one of the most studied in history. Scientists determined that this meteorite is of Martian origin, formed about 4 billion years ago, and fell to Earth roughly 13,000 years ago. Inside, they discovered particles of magnetite that some researchers thought might be signs of ancient microbial life on Mars. This discovery inspired NASA to undertake new investigations of the red planet and gave a boost to the development of astrobiology. Later, most specialists concluded that the structures found do not prove the existence of life on Mars. But even without giving a final answer, this stone changed the approach to the search for extraterrestrial life and showed that cosmic collisions can carry fragments of planets across the solar system. Antarctica is not only a land of icy deserts, but also a true testing ground for incredible scientific discoveries. Here, amid the cold and the perpetual darkness, scientists from the University of New South Wales made a sensation. They discovered microorganisms that are able to feed on air. These tiny bacteria do not need sunlight or the warmth of the planet's interior. They require only hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide to sustain life. Moreover, they can withstand extreme conditions: sharp temperature swings, ultraviolet radiation, freezing and thawing, drought, and complete darkness. The scientists analyzed soil samples collected in the Robinson Ridge and Adams Flat areas and identified 2 new types of bacteria, WPS2 and AD3. Their unique ability to literally extract energy from the air opens new horizons for science. After all, if such creatures can survive in the harshest conditions on Earth, who knows? Perhaps similar life exists on other planets as well. This discovery overturns our very understanding of what life is and what forms it can take. And, admit it, the very idea of air eaters somewhere under the Antarctic ice sounds like the beginning of a science fiction novel. When we imagine mountains, we picture majestic peaks reaching for the sky. They provide the backdrop for astonishing landscapes and beckon explorers. But beneath the ice of Antarctica lies something that was hard even to conceive. An entire mountain range that looks like the European Alps. Armed with radar and gravity sensors, scientists began an expedition to map the subglacial regions of the Gamburtsev Mountains. Many expected to find a flat plateau, but instead, the instruments revealed a breathtaking relief. Peaks and valleys preserved in pristine condition beneath a 2-kilometer thick layer of ice. Geophysicist Fauzia Fakoli from the British Antarctic Survey explained, "The fact that these jagged, sharp peaks survived means that the ice sheet formed very quickly, as if it canned the ancient landscape beneath it." This discovery changes scientists' ideas about how glaciers formed and how vulnerable they are to global warming. After all, if the ice once appeared so rapidly, who can say how quickly it might disappear? Now let us move to one of the most troubling objects in Antarctica. We are talking about the colossal Thwaites Glacier, which scientists have nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier. This gigantic mass of ice, located in the west of the continent, has kept the entire scientific world on edge for many years. Its width reaches approximately 120 kilometers, and it acts as a giant barrier holding back an enormous amount of ice in West Antarctica. If Thwaites begins to collapse rapidly, neighboring glaciers may follow, which would lead to a global rise in sea level. That is why the name Doomsday does not just sound frightening. It is quite justified. Scientists already see alarming signs. Warm ocean waters are undermining the glacier from below, and its grounding line is gradually retreating. Predicting a scenario of total collapse is difficult, but the consequences would be catastrophic for coastal regions around the world. It is important to understand, Thwaites is not the only indicator of global change, but it is like a symbol of how fragile Earth's climate system is. Its fate directly depends on how the planet's temperature changes, and that is precisely why this glacier is under especially close observation. Among the many discoveries in Antarctica, there is one that especially fires the imagination. We are talking about a mysterious pyramid discovered in satellite images in the year 2009. This enormous object, seemingly hidden beneath the ice, strikingly resembles the pyramids of Egypt, with 4 even triangular faces and almost perfect symmetry. Many researchers and conspiracy theorists have asked the question, could this be the work of an ancient civilization that might have existed here before Antarctica turned into an icy desert? Some suggest it is a monument of a vanished culture. Others speak of possible extraterrestrial origins, while skeptics are sure it is nothing more than a quirk of nature and a play of light in the images. But one thing is undeniable. The very thought that an artificial structure could be hidden beneath the ice cap turns our understanding of history upside down. After all, Antarctica is the last place on Earth where one would expect such a discovery. This astonished even experienced polar explorers. On the slopes of the McMurdo Dry Valleys, dozens of kilometers from the sea, scientists found the bodies of seals perfectly preserved by the icy dryness of the air. These mummies lay there for hundreds and possibly thousands of years, yet they looked as if the animals had died only recently. The main mystery is how marine creatures ended up so far from the water. One version says that strong storm winds blew the seals off course and they became lost in the snows, eventually dying from cold and hunger. Another theory suggests that the animals deliberately went deep into the continent in search of new colony sites, but could not survive. These icy mummies became an invaluable gift to science. Thanks to the extremely dry climate and sub-zero temperatures, tissues were so well preserved that researchers were able to study not only the external appearance, but also the internal organs of the animals. This made it possible to learn more about what the seals ate, what diseases they suffered from, and how the ecosystem of the Southern Ocean changed over the past centuries. Far from prying eyes, in the cold waters of the South Atlantic, lies a little-known but extremely important feature: the South Sandwich Trench. This deep-sea oceanic trough remained a mystery for a long time. Only in the 1980s, with the help of seismic studies, were scientists able to fully record its dimensions and characteristics. Here, two lithospheric plates collide, the South American and the South Sandwich. One dives beneath the other, forming a subduction zone. This means that powerful earthquakes and volcanic activity are possible in this area. The trench has become a true laboratory for researchers. It holds the keys to understanding how oceanic depths are formed and what forces are hidden in the bowels of the planet. Every new step in studying it reveals more mysteries and reminds us how little we know about the depths of the world ocean. Beneath Antarctica's ice, there are not only rocks and frozen waters, but true time capsules. Scientists have discovered the most ancient DNA samples here, which managed to survive for millions of years. These finds are called sedimentary ancient DNA, or seabed DNA, and they literally open doors into Earth's distant past. It all began in the year 2019, when researchers from the International Ocean Discovery Program carried out work in the Scotia Sea, north of Antarctica. In bottom sediments, they accidentally found fragments of DNA, and later, during analysis, it turned out that some of them had been preserved for more than 1 million years. For comparison, the previous record belonged to DNA from the Arctic permafrost, about 650,000 years. Interestingly, most of the samples found belong to eukaryotes, that is, plants, animals, and fungi rather than bacteria or viruses. However, a significant portion of the material belongs to diatoms, microscopic organisms that today form the foundation of marine ecosystems. These genetic traces are like pieces of a mosaic that make it possible to reconstruct the planet's climatic history. They show that about 5 million years ago, there were large surges of phytoplankton activity in the Southern Ocean. This means that the climate in ancient times was very different, and studying this DNA helps us understand what changes await us in the future. Imagine a river stretching for almost 460 kilometers, hidden under a kilometer-thick layer of ice. This is not fantasy, but the reality of Antarctica. Scientists discovered a giant subglacial river that flows toward the Weddell Sea, gathering waters beneath 4 of the most powerful glaciers. It was discovered using ice-penetrating radar during airborne surveying. And when it became clear that beneath the ice lies a system of rivers and lakes connected to one another, it became a true scientific shock. The basin of this river is comparable in area to France and Germany combined. Its waters flow beneath the Institute, Mueller, Academy, and Foundation glaciers and then go straight into the sea. And what is especially important, if these masses of ice begin to melt actively, the underground river could accelerate the process and lead to a catastrophic rise in global sea level, up to 14 meters. Of course, this will not happen in a single day, but the very fact of such an underground water artery makes scientists look differently at the future of Antarctica and our entire planet. It seems incredible that in the realm of cold, icy winds and polar night life can exist, but Antarctica once again breaks stereotypes. Here, right beneath the ice, entire concentrations of phytoplankton, tiny, photosynthesizing organisms were discovered, not only surviving, but actively multiplying. The study was led by physicist Christopher Horvat from the University of Auckland. His team used special instruments, underwater Argo sensors, which made more than 2,000 dives in the Southern Ocean from 2014 to 2021. They collected water samples and recorded the presence of pigments characteristic of phytoplankton. The result was a sensation. Almost 90% of the measurements showed a sharp increase in phytoplankton biomass even before the sea ice began to retreat. It turns out that even under thick ice, sun rays penetrate sufficiently for photosynthesis, forming entire under-ice, blooming gardens. This discovery is of colossal significance. It not only changes our ideas about life in extreme conditions, but also suggests that if such organisms can exist here, perhaps similar life exists on other worlds, for example, on Europa or Enceladus. Today, Antarctica is a kingdom of ice, but millions of years ago it was a very different land. Scientists have found evidence that during the Cretaceous period, about 75 million years ago, there were regular forest fires here. A group of paleobotanists from Brazil and Chile conducted the research. On King George Island, they found samples of ancient vegetation whose traces preserved charcoal inclusions. This means that the plants repeatedly underwent burning. The cause of the fires was active volcanoes, whose eruptions constantly ignited Antarctica's dense forests. And this discovery changes our understanding of the continent's past. It turns out it was not always a frozen realm, but at one time it was a living, fiery land. These data are also important because they show that Antarctica's climate and nature have changed more than once. And today's global warming is merely a new turn in a long history of change. There is one Antarctic mystery that has puzzled scientists for decades: huge holes in the ice, so-called Polynyas. They appear suddenly right in the middle of the ice cover and then disappear as if they never existed. Such strange openings were first noticed back in the 1970s thanks to satellites. At the time, they seemed like something random. But in the year 2017, something extraordinary happened. In the coldest months, when the ice should be especially strong, a gigantic Polynya, almost 4,000 square kilometers in area, opened right in the middle of Antarctica. Over 2 months, it expanded to incredible dimensions and then disappeared again with the arrival of summer. Scientists puzzled over what causes such phenomena for a long time. Only recently did a team from New York University in Abu Dhabi find an explanation. Powerful cyclones are to blame. When warm and cold air masses collide over the South Pole, hurricane-force winds with speeds of more than 100 kilometers per hour arise. They raise huge waves up to 16 meters high, tearing the ice apart and creating these enormous holes. But such Polynyas are not just a curious anomaly. They play a crucial role in the ecosystem. They become passageways for seals and penguins, and places where phytoplankton develops actively. Moreover, scientists believe that such phenomena can be indicators of climate change, because as cyclones intensify, Polynyas will appear more often, affecting both the atmosphere and the ocean. Antarctica hides not only rivers and mountains under the ice, but an entire network of volcanoes. Scientists from the University of Edinburgh made a sensation. Under the western part of the continent, they found nearly 100 subglacial volcanoes. Some of them are comparable in height to alpine giants reaching 4 kilometers. Until that moment, no one even suspected that there could be so many volcanic peaks here. It is now clear that West Antarctica surpasses even East Africa in the number of volcanoes, although East Africa was previously considered one of the world's main volcanic regions. These volcanoes are asleep for now, but their presence is alarming. If an eruption occurs, it could seriously disrupt the balance of the ice sheet. Lava flows and heat could weaken the ice shields, accelerating their movement into the ocean. This, in turn, would lead to a faster rise in sea level. Researchers warn that melting ice due to global warming could even awaken some of these volcanoes. The less pressure the ice cap exerts, the easier it is for volcanoes to break through to the surface. In Earth's history, such cases have already occurred. In Iceland and Alaska, after the end of the Ice Age, volcanoes became particularly active. Antarctica could well repeat this scenario, and this discovery is a troubling signal for all humankind. History knows many mysterious artifacts, but the Piri Reis map rightfully stands among the most astonishing. It was created in the year 1513 by the famous Ottoman admiral and is kept within the walls of Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. The map amazed scholars with its incredible level of detail. The Americas are depicted on it, officially discovered only decades later. But what is most astounding is that one can discern the outlines of Antarctica on the map, and not in an icy shell, but with mountain chains and a coastline, as if the cartographer had seen it in prehistoric times. How did Piri Reis manage to put on a map what modern science uncovered only thanks to satellites? There are versions that he relied on ancient charts lost over time, but there are also bolder hypotheses. Some speak of a vanished civilization with incredible knowledge, others of extraterrestrial sources, or even of time travel. Skeptics, of course, doubt the accuracy of the details and consider the map merely a set of coincidences. But the fact remains. The artifact forces us to reconsider the usual notions of how much humanity actually knew about the planet in deep antiquity. Amid the endless white landscapes of Antarctica, there is a place that looks as if nature itself decided to create a frightening spectacle. These are the so-called blood falls, flowing from Tabular Glacier in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. This phenomenon was first noticed back in the year 1911 by geologist Griffith Taylor, and since then, it has captured the imagination of both scientists and ordinary travelers. Imagine a stream of bright red water gushing from a snow-white mass of ice, as if the Earth itself were bleeding. In reality, there's no mysticism here. The water is saturated with iron and salt. When it contacts the air, oxidation occurs, and the liquid acquires the characteristic rusty red hue. The source of this eerie flow of blood is a subglacial lake that turned out to be isolated from the outside world for millions of years. There, in conditions of complete darkness, cold, and high salinity, a unique ecosystem formed. Microorganisms live in the water that can exist in extreme conditions where life would seem impossible. This discovery is especially important for science. It shows how resilient life is and how it can adapt even to the harshest conditions. Moreover, studying the blood glacier helps scientists better understand how life could have arisen on other planets. After all, if microbes have survived here, why could they not exist, for example, on Mars or on the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn? And finally, a discovery that looks more like a shot from a sci-fi movie. In the cold depths of the Southern Ocean off the coast of Antarctica, scientists discovered a new, astonishing creature dubbed the Antarctic strawberry sea lily. At first glance, this being seems extraterrestrial. It has about 20 long arms, some smooth and some feathered. It can reach a length of 20 centimeters, and it truly resembles a strawberry, only with bizarre hands reaching in all directions. This find belongs to marine biologist Greg Rouse and his team from the University of California. The scientists studied the ocean depths for a long time and discovered not only this species, but several previously unknown varieties of feather stars. All of them belong to the echinoderms, the closest relatives of sea stars and sea urchins. The special feature of the new creature is that its small, strawberry-like bumps at the tips of its arms help it cling tightly to the seafloor, while the arms themselves serve as a trap for food. Previously, science knew of only one similar species in Antarctica, and now there are 8. This discovery shows that there are far more forms of life hidden beneath the ice of the Southern Ocean than we are used to thinking. And perhaps the most amazing finds are still ahead of us. And I would like to devote the remaining part of the video to the most shocking finds under the ice, which, to be honest, are very hard to believe. Airplanes, ancient viruses, and even people frozen alive.
On the 27th of December 1984, in the Allen Hills Mountains in Antarctica, a meteorite weighing 1.93 kilograms was found. According to researchers, it belongs to a collection of 34 Martian meteorites discovered on Earth. It was given a designation based on its discovery location, ALH 84001, which stands for Allen Hills. It is believed to have crystallized from Martian magma around 4 billion years ago, later experiencing impacts from other meteorites or asteroids. This means it is a fragment of Mars's crust, having existed on its home planet until approximately 17 million years ago. Then, another asteroid strike caused it to break off and travel through space. Eventually, about 13,000 years ago, it landed in Antarctica. But the most interesting part of its story is yet to come. In 1996, NASA scientists conducted a chemical analysis of the meteorite using an electron microscope. They made a shocking hypothesis that the carbon compounds in the meteorite might have originated through bacterial activity. Several theories suggest that the organic compounds in the meteorite could be the result of ancient Martian microorganisms or contamination by earthly substances. Grasshoppers and glaciers seem like two incompatible things, but there are exceptions to every rule. In the mountains of Custer National Park, located in the American state of Montana, lies the so-called Grasshopper Glacier. It is quite different from typical white glaciers because it has a grayish color, all due to the presence of tens of millions of grasshopper specimens frozen within it. We do not know exactly how they got there, but one popular theory suggests that centuries ago, a swarm of billions of predatory insects migrated through the Rocky Mountains. They were suddenly trapped by a severe winter storm, and countless insects became permanently embedded in the mountain's icy landscape. Grasshopper Glacier caught the attention of scientists when it was discovered in the early 20th century by geologist Jennifer Kimball. She sent insect samples to the U.S. Bureau of Entomology, where it was determined that they were a species of Rocky Mountain locust that became extinct more than a century ago. In 1986, during an expedition to James Ross Island in Antarctica, Argentine geologists discovered a new species of dinosaur. They managed to uncover the bones of an ankylosaurus beneath the ice. And although excavations took 10 years, what is a decade compared to the grand epoch of prehistoric giants? Harsh natural conditions delayed the extraction of the fossil, but persistence and science triumphed over the harsh climate. The new species was named Antarctopelta, meaning Antarctic shield. To date, this fossil remains the only specimen of this newly discovered species. In 2010, a group of tusk hunters in Siberia stumbled upon one of the most incredible relics of the Ice Age. In the permafrost, they found the remains of a woolly mammoth that roamed the icy tundra around 28,000 years ago and died at a very young age. More specifically, it was a female mammoth named Yucca, who likely met her end between the ages of 6 and 9 years old. Yucca fell into a swamp and drowned in the mire. Thanks to these natural conditions, her body was almost perfectly preserved, effectively mummified. Scientists were even able to extract samples of her blood. Yucca is now exhibited at the Moscow Museum and is certainly worth visiting. Until that moment, Preserved mammoth remains were mainly found in Siberia, but Canada set a record for the quality of mummified woolly mammoth remains. In the Yukon region, a team of miners found a mammoth calf that had lain in the permafrost for nearly 30,000 years. One of the gold prospectors noticed a dark, shiny animal with short legs, initially suspecting it was the remains of a baby bison. However, upon realizing the animal had a trunk, he showed the find to his boss. All work was immediately halted, and experts were called in. 2 geologists arrived just in time to extract the remains before a storm hit. The mammoth was wrapped in tarp and transported for a ceremonial event. Scientists, miners, politicians, and indigenous elders gathered in a circle, with the elders blessing the find and giving the mammoth the name Nun Cho Ga, meaning big baby in the local indigenous language. This young calf, estimated to be about 1 month old, likely became separated from its mother and got stuck in the mud. Tragically, the calf could not free itself and perished. Such tragedies are common among elephant calves. The mud is slippery, their bodies are heavy, and they lack the strength to escape, even with their mother nearby. When you think of mummies, ancient rulers of Egypt might come to mind, but history's preservation of bodies does not end there. In 1991, high in the Alpine mountains on the border of Austria and Italy, a frozen mummy was discovered. It was found by 2 German tourists who were on a hiking trip. The Copper Age mummy was examined at the University of Innsbruck and was nicknamed Otzi. It turned out to be the oldest mummy ever found in Europe. The man lived between 3350 and 3105 BCE. This means Otzi is over 5,000 years old. You might wonder how he remained preserved. Over time, his body should have completely decomposed. The answer lies in the extremely low temperatures of the Alps, which acted like a deep freezing technology. Scientists determined that Otzi was left-handed, about 157 centimeters tall, wore size 8 shoes, had brown eyes, dark chestnut hair, and tanned skin, suggesting his Southern European origins. How did he end up in the Alps? At the time of his death, Otzi was in poor physical condition due to a rare genetic anomaly, lactose intolerance, which hindered the formation of 12 pairs of ribs. He also suffered from intestinal diseases, a bad back, and joint problems. Despite all this, he decided to traverse the Alps. Based on his belongings, he appeared to be a hunter. At the time of his death, he was lightly equipped with a backpack, axe, dagger, bow, arrows, and a small amount of food, which suggests his journey might have been cut short by exhaustion. People of the Iron Age were likely very different from us today, but one thing they had in common with us has remained nearly unchanged: skis. In 2014, a group of scientists found an archaic ski in a national park in Norway, and 7 years later, its matching pair was discovered just a few meters away in even better condition than the first. It is worth noting that skis have an ancient history. Archaeological data suggests that hunters in Europe and Asia began using them to pursue game as far back as the end of the last ice age, approximately 11,000 years ago. The oldest ski ever found, discovered in Russia, is around 8,000 years old. A Soviet expedition in 1958 discovered a hidden mountain range in Antarctica, buried under 600 meters of ice and snow. The Trans-Antarctic Mountains span the entire icy continent, stretching nearly 4,000 kilometers. Their peaks rise up to 3,390 meters, placing them alongside the European Alps in height. We know little about the time when the South Pole was a warm, densely populated region, and these mountains were not snowy. It is possible that millions of years from now, this remote mountain range will once again be lush and evergreen. Although most gold lies beneath the earth, melting glaciers have revealed new deposits. During the last ice age, glaciers often transported gold-bearing rocks, and some of these golden stones remained frozen within the ice. While Earth's gold reserves are typically spread across continents, significant amounts of gold inclusions are now being found in melting glaciers. As global warming continues and glacier melting accelerates, prospectors who manage to find veins of gold within the ice might become wealthy very quickly. In October 2017, scientists were shocked by an observation in Antarctica. In the middle of winter, amidst the ocean ice, a giant gaping Polynya, a reservoir of warm, salty water, reappeared. It was named the Piri Reis, after the underwater mountain beneath it in the Weddell Sea. It was first observed via satellite in 1974. The Polynya, comparable in size to the U.S. state of Maine, seemed to appear out of nowhere. Researchers determined that it formed because the deeper waters of this part of the Southern Ocean are warmer and saltier than the surface. Ocean currents can occasionally bring this warmer water upward, where it melts the ice sheet. Once a warm reservoir forms, the water in the hole remains exposed to the atmosphere, making it difficult for new layers of ice to form. You might wonder what is so surprising about this. When a fisherman drills a hole in the ice, it also takes time to freeze again. But such phenomena are usually observed near the coast, where the ice is relatively thin. In Antarctica, however, this Polynya appeared hundreds of kilometers away from shore, where ocean depths reach hundreds of meters. Since its discovery, it has continued to intermittently disappear and reappear. In 1848, Sir John Franklin, a renowned Arctic explorer, was officially declared missing. Considering his status, the event caused an uproar, and soon the British Arctic Council began organizing search efforts, offering a substantial monetary reward to anyone who could locate Franklin or his expedition members. Here is what happened. On the 19th of May, 1845, two polar expedition ships, the Terror and the Erebus, set off in search of the Northwest Passage from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Both ships vanished without a trace, and despite desperate searches, no information emerged for the next 176 years. The mystery of their location was only resolved in July 2010, when Canada sent a team of scientists and surveyors to find them. On the 25th of July, after breaking through the ice, the team decided to test their underwater scanner. Incredibly, the scanner immediately detected a shipwreck. However, it was neither the Erebus nor the Terror, but a completely different mystery. It turned out to be the British ship HMS Investigator, a sailing exploration vessel from the 19th century that had been sent to search for the missing expedition in 1848 to 1849, but met the same tragic fate. It sank, crushed by ice. Thanks to this fortunate discovery during the first test, the entire investigation took only a few minutes. Using the same technology, the Erebus was found in 2014 and the Terror in 2016. In 2013, a French mountaineer was hiking on Mont Blanc when he noticed a metal box embedded in the ice with the inscription, "Made in India." Upon opening it, he was astonished to find a collection of approximately 100 colorful, precious stones, sapphires, emeralds, and rubies. Subsequent investigations revealed that the jewels were being transported on an Air India flight that crashed in this region either in 1950 or 1966. There had been 2 Indian airline crashes over these mountains, resulting in the deaths of 48 and 117 people, respectively. The law-abiding mountaineer handed the find over to the police and patiently waited to see if any rightful owners would come forward. After 8 years, no one claimed the treasure, so local authorities rewarded the discoverer with a portion of the cache's value, approximately 150,000 euros. Imagine an icy alpine desert in November at an altitude of over 3,000 meters. It was here in 1946 that a story unfolded which feels like the plot of a gripping movie. On the 18th of November, a Douglas C-53 Sky Trooper Dakota military transport plane departed Austria for Italy. On board were high-ranking Allied officers and their families. Captain Ralph Tate Jr. chose a longer route to avoid bad weather. Over the Alps, the plane encountered a storm, and the pilots lost their bearings. To avoid crashing into mountain peaks, Tate made a desperate decision to land the plane directly on a glacier. The plane skidded across the ice and came to a stop just hundreds of meters from a deep ravine. Miraculously, everyone survived. The most serious injury was a broken leg. But their relief was short-lived. The high altitude, freezing temperatures, and lack of communication posed a deadly threat. After 3 days, a rescue team finally located the plane. Do you know who spotted them first? The captain's father. A signal flare led to their rescue, and all passengers returned home. The story did not end there. The plane remained on the glacier until 2012, when 3 Canadian students accidentally found its propeller sticking out of the ice. Initially, they thought it was a log, but the discovery quickly made headlines. As the glacier continues to melt, perhaps more details of this incredible story will come to light. A similar event occurred in July 1942 when a squadron of 6 P-38 Lightning fighters and 2 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers encountered a blizzard over Greenland. The planes were forced to make an emergency landing on the ice. The crew was rescued, but the planes remained buried under layers of ice that, over the decades, reached a thickness of 90 meters. 50 years later, it was decided to recover one of the P-38s, nicknamed Glacier Girl. The excavation took 11 years and cost $2 million, involving heated plates and hot water to melt the ice and bring the plane to the surface. Remarkably, the aircraft was in decent condition. After $500,000 in repairs, the plane flew again in 2002. In 2007, Glacier Girl attempted to complete its historic transatlantic route, but was forced to land in Canada due to a technical issue. This success inspired further searches. In 2011, ground-penetrating radar detected one of the bombers, known as Echo. A 2019 expedition planned to recover the plane, but the results remain unknown. Beneath layers of eternal permafrost, which hold secrets spanning millennia, ancient viruses, living relics of the past, are hidden. Some of these have already been extracted by scientists. But what if the ice continues to melt? What if it harbors a virus capable of changing the course of history? For example, Pithavirus sibericum, found in Siberia, is astonishingly large, a true giant among viruses, with an age of around 30,000 years. Its neighbor, a smaller virus discovered in the same sample, can produce hundreds of new viruses inside an infected amoeba. These viruses are harmless to humans, but their discovery highlights how much remains unknown within the permafrost. Another giant, Pandora virus, is estimated to be 48,500 years old. Found in the Russian Far East, it contains more than 2,000 genes, most of which are entirely unique. While it is also currently harmless to humans, what might the future hold? As glaciers melt, the chance of dangerous pathogens emerging becomes a reality. Scientists warn that the next virus might already be frozen in the Arctic ice, and we must be prepared. Icebound secrets may conceal not only history but also threats to the future of humanity.
A mystery filmed at Utah Lake attracted the attention of a huge number of people due to hints of extraterrestrial activity. 2 guys stumbled upon a mysterious circle in the ice, about 5 feet in diameter. It was full of small holes that seemed to emanate from the center, according to some logic. When they touched the holes, they discovered some kind of slime inside. Some called them alien eggs. When the clip went viral, viewers worldwide began to wonder what kind of miracle they were witnessing. Skeptics scoffed that someone just spilled coffee and created a galactic puzzle. But the truth eventually came out. It turned out these were not alien eggs, but an art project by a student from an American university. The holes represented numerous eyes, and the project's goal was to make people guess what it was. Strange, right? The research took 3 years, and during that time, people have pondered something much more useful. Just one discovery can change our understanding of human evolution as a species. The creature called the Minnesota Iceman could very well have been a species that did not go extinct and continues to live somewhere in remote areas. It's believed this species was a transitional form from Neanderthals to humans. A half-man, half-ape with a flattened nose, standing 6 feet tall, covered in dark brown hair, found in the ice, did not die in the distant past, but became a hunting victim. Someone shot him in the back. The bullet went through one eye and somehow lost the other. Interestingly, the specimen found in Siberia was then secretly transported to the United States by a private millionaire philanthropist from California. It was then exhibited at local fairs in the 1960s and 70s. This is why scientists believe the Minnesota Iceman might have been a hoax. The scientific community does not deny that an ancient snowman could have survived as a species, just relocated. On September 23, 1953, this creature was allegedly discovered by the father of the man in the video, who claimed it was neither an ape nor an ancient human. They kept it frozen for 65 years, a nice greeting from the past, you might say. In comparison, this specimen was quite small, and notably, the hairy creature was missing one leg. There were rumors that scientists even took a DNA sample, but its origin remained a mystery. Enthusiasts claim that this creature might be from another planet. If it's from the planet of the apes, well, we might consider it an alien ape. Jokes aside, I'm puzzled by its thick, shiny fur. It very much resembles synthetic hair, and something you would find on a doll head. What do you think about this? In Los Angeles, during the construction of a subway line, workers stumbled upon some amazing artifacts. They found unknown animal bones that probably laid there for many thousands of millions of years. Later, the skeleton was identified. Archaeologists claimed that they found a giant ground sloth. These prehistoric mammals roamed here more than 11,000 years ago. You might think that a sloth is a slow, small, cute creature with long limbs. And you would be right. But these ancient beasts were huge, taller than the average human. In addition to the sloth, fragments of other mammals were found at the excavation site. It remains a mystery whether that sloth was an herbivore or not, but there's definitely plenty to think about. On the icy expanses of the Yukon in Canada, gold miners found something even cooler than gold. They discovered a wolf pup mummy with preserved fur and teeth. It was established that this species lived there more than 50,000 years ago. After examining its body, it was found that the wolf pup was only 7 weeks old when it died, 50,000 years ago. It turned out that its genetic lineage goes back to the Ice Age wolves that inhabited what is now Russia. Geneticists were able to extract a sequence of the entire DNA genome, and since its internal organs were preserved, they even determined the pup's last meal. Turns out it was salmon. This is the most complete wolf mummy ever found, and since it was female, they named her Zur, meaning wolf, in the language of the indigenous people. Even after thousands of years, the woolly rhinoceros was still discovered on the planet, and someone even managed to touch its fluffy fur. In Siberia, researchers found the remains of a young rhinoceros in the permafrost and named it Sasha. The discovery was dated about 10,000 years ago. And thanks to the ice, the body retained its shape quite well. Scientists hope to obtain DNA data and piece together the species' evolutionary history. Look, we can fully examine its features, ears and teeth, even pieces of its horn. It weighs quite heavily, 130 pounds, and looks as if it was severely bitten. Scientists are still studying this specimen, and admit it, a rhinoceros in Siberia is something new, even if it was well long forgotten in the ice. The thawing of permafrost on Earth reveals many wonderful relics from the past. In the Russian Arctic, they found a perfectly preserved bear. Deer were digging through the snow and soil searching for food, and they found the remains first, and later, the relic was handed over to scientists. They were amazed by the preservation quality. The bear in the ice remained almost in its original state. An intact nose, teeth, and internal organs gave insight that it was an ancient relative of the brown bear. It was calculated that the mummified remains of the cave bear were 39,500 years old. This is an unprecedented discovery, providing scientists with invaluable information about the animal world. Two friends were exploring the shores of the Missouri River when they came across something incredible: a massive skull. The skull of an animal by itself is not such a rare find, but it's important to understand how old it is. If the remains are fossilized, then it's probably a rare historical artifact. Upon closer examination, they realized that it was the skull of a large horned animal resembling a bison. However, it was not a modern bison, but an extinct one. Judging by its size, it was extremely large. Scientists concluded that this was a relic of the Ice Age and did not match any modern species. An amazing find was made in 2007 by a hunter and reindeer herder in Yamal. In the upper reaches of the Erebus River, he discovered a creature that looked like a baby elephant. But how could this be in Siberia? It remains perfectly preserved in the permafrost. Scientists examined the body and reported that the mammoth calf was only about a month old when she died in a flood. This happened around 42,000 years ago, but scientists were able to study all the details thoroughly. Most likely, the baby fell into a mud pit and got trapped. This is still the most common death of elephants today. Viewer's Choice section. This incredible discovery was made by a mountaineer who got lost among icy peaks and stumbled upon this strange body. He immediately contacted authorities and handed the mummy over for examination. Those who have seen the photo already suggested that this was an ancient body and was treated with a special method to prevent decomposition. They say it was covered with some kind of balm or algae. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comments below. An ordinary day of fishing turned the life of this young fisherman upside down. He came across an unexpected sight. Under the ice on the frozen lake surface, they saw something dark. It even seemed that it was stuck. Upon coming closer, the child was amazed to discover that a majestic deer had frozen in the ice, its body half trapped in the icy frame, as it had frozen halfway through. Its neck and spine curved above the frozen water. Most likely, it was fleeing a predator, but sadly fell to the ice trying to survive. Or perhaps something was broken, like a leg or a neck, and then sadly simply got stuck in this trap. The cold didn't give it much time, and the ice engulfed this unfortunate animal. In 2018, Norwegian researchers and archaeologists made an important discovery in the inland County. There in the mountainous area, they found in ice preserved ancient skis. As the glacier began to melt, the tip of the ski poked out from under the snow. This was the second pair found. The first previously discovered skis were estimated to be around 1,300 years old. They had to extract this using an ice axe and hot water as to not to try and damage the wooden equipment. Upon inspecting the design, experts highly praised the ski's craftsmanship and the high standards of skiing in ancient times. It's interesting to think about those who lost them and under what circumstances. In 1915, a ship named Endurance, one of the two vessels of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expeditions, reached the southernmost point of its journey and was about to return, but the ice began to move in a harsh section of the ocean. The ship was literally trapped in ice, crushing the hull, and the crew fought for their vessel for 3 days, trying to pump water from the holds in minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit. But evacuation became inevitable, and while the wreckage was afloat, people managed to collect the maximum content of the holds and cabins. In 2022, the wreckage of the ship was found at a depth of about 10,000 feet in surprisingly good condition. The ship's structure did not collapse, and even traces of paint were clearly visible. Many details such as hatches, ladders, and fittings remained intact. The ship's final resting place is now under the protection of the Antarctic Treaty, and the vessel has been declared a historic monument. Winter is a harsh season for everyone, especially for animals that still need to go out and search for food. When the temperature drops below minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the chances of survival are equally low for all. Many animals turn into frozen statues. They sadly just freeze in place. Of course, people came to the rescue, and if there's a chance, save whoever they can, be it a wolf or a deer. On a clear winter morning, a woman enjoyed the bright rays of the sun and decided to capture a beautiful scene when a gray fur on the porch railing caught her attention. When she dug out the creature, she was saddened. It turned out a squirrel had frozen here last night, trying to find shelter from the merciless cold. Yes, this squirrel became a sad symbol of the harshness of winter. In search of salvation, animals run to people. If the house's entrance on the porch are open, it would not have frozen. How sad that life and death are irreversible processes, and you cannot just thaw a living creature so it wakes up. This turtle simply petrified from the cold. It's hard to imagine that such creatures are designed for snow and ice at all. The turtle was found near a frozen river and ended up on the road of its own accord. Already frozen, it was attacked by other predators. It was partially eaten by eagles and coyotes. Observers noted that the remaining parts of the turtle felt as hard as granite. Poor turtle. Of course, but imagine if someone tried chewing on it. Definitely not even close to turtle soup. Not only people show compassion for freezing animals, the birds themselves try to help their companions in trouble. The cold is equally unforgiving for everyone. What kind of weather it must be for ducks to freeze in a pond. A pair of ducks got trapped in an icy fountain. The water simply froze around them, depriving them of the ability and space to move. One duck had already frozen, and the drake got stuck trying to help her. This heartbreaking scene makes us understand that every living creature deserves a helping hand, and that kindness is not limited to humans. In March, extreme cold unexpectedly hit the Netherlands. Many rivers and canals froze all of their contents. Overnight, they turned into a skating rink. A goose tragically died in an icy trap, but a father and his newborn goslings were confusedly stomping on the ice, not knowing where to go or what to do. The ice was brittle and could have just as easily swallowed them, if not for the man who came to their rescue. With the help of a net, the man carefully pulled the goslings out and warmed them under his clothes. And after that tragic day, the remaining family found refuge in his home. Would you take these geese into your home? Are you ready for a touching story about a little bird? A kind-hearted man passing by noticed that a bird had ended up in an icy trap. Its legs were frozen to the snowdrift, and it could not move. The stranger carefully shoveled away the snow and chipped away at the ice. When the bird felt it could break free from the ground, it immediately escaped its icy prison and flew away. It's a great story, and we can only applaud the nature lover. When winter comes to some regions of Russia, the temperatures can drop to below minus 35 degrees Celsius. That's minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. It's almost impossible for stray animals to survive. Cats often seek refuge under parked cars, as they give off some warmth for a while. But here's the catch. The snow under the car melts at first, then quickly turns back into ice, and then the cat with long fur is in trouble. This Siberian cat unknowingly fell into a dangerous trap. It warmed up, but got stuck under the car. When the car left, it remained frozen there like a cocoon. Luckily, people noticed and started a rescue operation. They brought out warm water and melted the ice. This must have been done carefully. Remember, if you put your frozen hands under even slightly warm water, they would ache terribly. Thawing is not easy, but the cat was saved, warmed up, and sent to the vet for a checkup. A heartbreaking turn of events forced people to rush into the icy water. The coastline of Newfoundland turned into a massive rescue operation. We love dolphins for their playful and friendly nature, but this time, fate dealt them cruelty. A whole pod was trapped in relentless ice. Their skin was very delicate, and they had suffered severe injuries when the waves had thrown them against sharp rocks. Beaten by Arctic ice in shallow water, they lose their ability to return to the ocean. Tight ice formation led them to shore. People stood in the icy water for hours, doing everything they could to help them. The outcome was bittersweet because they could not reach many of the dolphins. However, few were saved from ice captivity, but most of the unfortunate ones were out of reach. Plus, the sad situation was accompanied by unforgiving cold. Nevertheless, a touching story of community efforts to save wildlife. People even cleared the dolphins' blowholes of ice to prevent them from suffocating. I hope the rescued individuals were released back into the wild and did not end up in a dolphinarium. You can pull a fish out of water even if it's heavy, but try pulling a horse out. It's like dragging a hippopotamus out of a swamp. Such a challenge arose in Russia when 11 horses got stuck in an icy pond at once. How they got there was a mystery, but it's extremely difficult for such an animal to survive in cold water. A horse will quickly lose its strength, but fortunately, resourceful farmers began rescue operations in time using machinery and ropes. It's important to not only pull the horse out, but also to not harm it, break its legs or neck. One by one, the horses were pulled out of the icy swamp and taken to the nearest animal medical center for rehabilitation. Everyone deserves such care. For some animals, deep freezing does not mean death. Meet the small amphibian with fantastic abilities living in the North American forests. The wood frog enters a frozen hibernation mode in winter. While other animals seek shelter in burrows, this creature turns into a tiny ice cube. In a state of suspended animation, its heartbeat slows down, digestion stops, and its cells are covered with a layer of glucose to prevent atrophy. And in spring, the frog thaws and returns to its original state. Nature is sometimes some of the most incredible and delightful things in the known universe. This story out of context will sound like a horror movie script. A team of French scientists go on an expedition to explore the depths of a frozen lake in the icy heart of Siberia. An ancient secret is hidden beneath the ice, and they find a monster. An ancient virus comes to life upon thawing. Scary? This is exactly what happened in reality. These viruses came to life and were capable of killing. The Pandora virus and 12 other ancient viruses found at a depth of up to 50 feet are between 48,000 to 27,000 years old and have earned the reputation as the most deadly ever studied. Scientists did not aim to open Pandora's box and release yet another monster, as, on the contrary, the Earth's climate got warmer, and it's necessary to understand how viruses will spontaneously free themselves. For comparison, these viruses were truly gigantic. They were visible in an ordinary light microscope, whereas others can only be seen with an electron microscope. Does that mean that modern people are threatened by ancient infections? This remains to be seen. Recent discoveries have shown that Antarctica is not just a frozen desert. Scientists from the Australian National University have discovered a huge cave system near active volcanoes. The cave corridors were laid by columns of volcanic ash. Inside would be quite cozy for various life forms. In 2019, expeditions discovered moss, algae, and mysterious DNA. Did you know that more than 130 volcanoes have been discovered in the mainland part of Antarctica and in the islands adjacent to it, with 15 of them still active? If each of them has its own cave network, who knows how many undiscovered creatures there might be hiding in there. This is a video for those who think that there's no life in the depths under Antarctica's ice. Scientists managed to drill through the icy surface of the lakes and discover that a thriving ecosystem exists in the icy depths. This unexpected discovery excited the scientific community, and it turns out that there are no limits to life beyond the icy boundary. Do you think that there are completely uninhabited corners of the Earth? Geologists from the Research University of Milwaukee discovered an ancient petrified forest in Antarctica in November 2017. Even if it's so-called summer on this continent, swinging a pickaxe into frozen ground is a titanic task. These fossils date back to 260 million years. We see real tree rings, proving that Antarctica's barren landscape was not always like this. Only 13 fragments of trees were found, but scientists have already concluded that almost half of the continent was once covered in forests. These relics are much older than any dinosaur bones ever found. In fact, Antarctica was something very cool. Until 45 million years ago, there was no ice caps here, but green forests and unseen animals roaming here. I would definitely like to see a virtual installation of this.
Well then, friends, this brings our long episode to an end. If you liked it and want to watch something else interesting on our channel, then subscribe to the channel and write something nice in the comments to help promote this video. By the way, you can write the keyword rocket in the comments. That way, I'll know you watched to the very end. Thank you all very much for watching. And next, watch one of the 2 videos that have appeared on your screen. They are insanely interesting.